All right. So here we have, spawning up in the top left-hand corner of the map, the red Zerg player in the first semifinals for today is the player from Root Gaming. Give it up for the Korean Hydra. And his opponent spun down here on the bottom right-hand corner of the map, the blue Terran player, also a Korean himself, but looking for a bit of a breakout opportunity. Give it up for TANGTANG. These Koreans know what's up. There's no restrictions on who can enter. It's just played on the North American server. That is the only real regional restriction on these cups. And of course, it is a $100 total prize pool. $60 going to first place, $20 going to second place, and $10 for third and fourth. So you know, you don't even have to get first place or second place or even third place to get that money, that prize pool, as there is no third, fourth place match. It's just third, fourth place. You get $10. You know what $10 can buy? That can buy you a burrito from Chipotle, which I'm not sponsored by, despite how much I talk about them. It can also get you a couple other things. You can get a couple of gumballs with the remaining change. Depends on where you live. Some Chipotle burritos, I've been in places where they only cost like $5.75. I think that's the cheapest I've ever seen a Chipotle burrito on the Midwest. And then I think there are some places like San Francisco where they're like $8. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I can buy like 8 gumballs for 25 cents. Actually, gumballs are like 50 cents these days now. But in actually more relevant topics, we do have a game in our hands. We have a Reaper coming on in from TANGTANG, trying to get a little bit of a scout off. Does spot out Gas Geyser, sees that there is going to be Zerg speed coming out. No sort of weird gasless opening coming out from Hydra. You always have to be careful with Hydra. You never know what Hydra is being taught by root cats, especially when you have these newer maps where that's where Hydra and cats just have a field day. That's where they really start to bust out the crazy things, when they get a new map to play with that is a little bit unorthodox. Now, I would say Frozen Temple, it's a map that I personally have not been enjoying, but I think a lot of other players might enjoy a little bit more. The reason why is just because as you get into the further bases, after that third expansion, your bases start to feel a little bit further away. They start to feel a little bit difficult to defend, I think, at times. And oh my god, wow, Hydra not only picking off that SCV, but killing off a mule as well. That is a really nice win. That was a pretty fresh mule, I believe, as well. Hellions finally gonna be able to push those up. Just 4 Zerglings. It wasn't even a massive number of Zerglings. They pushed back the Hellion, or sorry, not the Hellion. They pushed back the Reaper, pushed back a lot. And you can see now TANGTANG actually sitting at home, trying to get out as many of these Hellions as possible. But he also gets up a Tech Lab starport that starts up Banshee Cloak as well as the Banshee itself. Now this is going to be fun to see, as Hydra is going up to a very fast 2-base lair tech. Could be going for that very fast 2-base Spire play. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 Gas Geysers out. And with Lair Tech getting so close to finishing up, I think it was Larva popping. I almost thought that was the Lair finishing up. We are probably going to be seeing a Spire being plopped down. And a Spire is nice for dealing with the Banshees, but the Spire is not going to be finished up in time to deal with the first round of Banshees. Cloak is going to be coming on up. It's going to be finishing up in just a matter of 30 seconds. The first Banshee is now popping on out. Pause is going down as Hydra says, I need more time to get out my Mutalisk. That's not the way that time zones work, Hydra. You pausing also delays your Spire. But we got a decent number of Zerglings also popping on out. How many queens does he have? He has 4 queens out, so that's a pretty decent number. He's getting that good creep spread going. In fact, I really like the creep spread coming out from Hydra. This is a really important map. I think, in my opinion, I haven't seen a lot of the TVZs popping out on this map. But I feel like it's going to be a map that it's going to be very important to get the creep spread going, just because your third expansion can be it's not super far away. It's also just on the low ground of your main base. So it's one of those tucked in bases in that regard. But it's going to be so important to get that creep spread going to just, first of all, buy yourself time, because if your opponent charges up this ramp, they're suddenly in between your natural and your third expansion. That's a really difficult spot to be. So you want to buy time by getting that creep spread going down along this area. You also want to be able to get the creep spread going in case your opponent just knocks down these rocks and opens up another avenue of attack. If your opponent tries to go for some of the weirder third expansions, like instead of going for this third, or, you know, maybe even for 4th expansions, instead of going for this 4th expansion, you try and grab this expansion, and then you make it so that you're just pushing along this area anyway. So you're defending that 4th by also pushing into your opponent's 3rd and 4th expansions. That can be a really scary prospect. So getting that creep spike going early on is going to be so important, I think, for a lot of Zerg players, as we start to see this map come into play more and more often. But Banshee making its way across the map. The hatchery spots out the Banshee, and we do have none of... Okay, the Queens are being pulled finally for Hydra into the main base. Spire is not quite finished up. In fact, the Banshee might even be able to do a little bit of damage because there's no Spore Crawlers, there's no detection. This is catching Hydra completely off guard. You're going to be able to just pick away at one of the Queens, but the Overseer is finished up, and he is going to be able to take out that Banshee. That is a really good pick off, actually, for Hydra. As only really losing, what, 2 workers? Overseer moves on in, sees, okay, that starport is no longer on that tech lab. You have stim going up. I don't have to worry about additional Banshees. My Spire is going to be finished up soon, and I don't have to worry about keeping any of those Mutalisks at home. That's actually really important, because you don't want to waste any time going after additional Banshees. There's this other Banshee that moves in over here, but the Overseer's already there. And the Queens get it so low on health that as soon as, yeah, if this Banshee even tries to run, it's going to try and outrun the Overseer. You can stick 1 Mutalisk on this Banshee and send the rest across the map to try and put on that harassment. Now, of course, the Banshees did scout out the Spire, so I think that TANGTANG has more than enough time to get up some missile turrets, as we do end up seeing the first missile turret going down, making sure that he can defend his production facilities. And of course, the next spot he's going to want to get some of those down is his mineral lines, but those missile turrets are coming out a little bit on the later side, I would say. Oh my god, the Mutalisks are in decent enough numbers that they can just take out these Marines one at a time. One of the Mutalisks may end up falling relatively soon, but some good control from Hydra. Oh, gonna be taking some missile turret shots, but he's just focus firing down the missile turret, and now suddenly he's gonna be able to go after some of these other things. Oh, okay, looks like Stim does finish up in time on that tech lab, but Hydra is doing a surprising amount of damage with these Mutalisks, despite the fact that that Spire was scouted out. TANGTANG maybe thinking that he had a little bit more time, maybe not realizing how far along that Spire was, but now he ends up losing more of these Marines as they pop out. He's gonna lose the reactor on the starport. Goodbye, second medevac. More of these Marines are going down, and actually, can Hydra just rally Mutalisks across the map? Can he actually just win with just the Mutalisks? Like, is this really gonna happen? GG, he won with just the Mutalisks. Wow, Hydra. I mean, he was a little bit favored coming into this, but that's not the kind of game I was expecting. Well-earned victory, though. Okay, here's where I say I'm not a Grandmaster level player. I am not Hydra. I am not, you know, Maru or Life, or well, I'm definitely not Life because I've never match fixed. Well, of course, no confirmation of that. Jokes aside, I won't say criticize TANGTANG too much, but I really do feel like he had the opportunity to get up those missile turrets a little bit earlier. And even just get up additional defenses for the Mutalisk transition a little bit earlier. And he sort of just skimped on them. I think he felt like he had more time than he did. And he ended up getting out those units a little bit later. He didn't have, you know, the missile. He had 1 missile turret finish up his production line, but he didn't have any in his mineral lines. He didn't have his all of his Marines bunched up together in one sort of spot to defend in one particular location. So it definitely ended up not working out quite in his favor. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hop into game number 2, which is going to be Dust Towers. We'll see you guys there for our second game in the semifinals. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're hopping back into it. Game number 2, as we spawn down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map on top of the red Zerg player from Root Gaming. Give it up for Hydra, sitting up 1-0. And his opponent, spawning up here in the top right-hand corner of the map, the blue Terran player. Didn't have the best last game, was probably a bit of a frustrating loss, but still looking for that comeback. Give it up for TANGTANG, who I think some people in the chat, Vicious Donut and Mubuntu, both saying, you know, it seems like according to Wikipedia, he was a former retired player. TANGTANG is, and was previously on Prime before Prime ended up sort of dying. So that's a bit more history that I was not fully aware of about TANGTANG. But we got a lot of Zerglings coming out. We got 6 Zerglings and more coming on out. Ooh. This is actually a surprising number of Zerglings. This is one of those number of Zerglings that that you hope your opponent hasn't completed the wall off, and maybe they're going for the reactor, and these Zerglings might be able to get the pick off on the reactor before it actually finishes. First Reaper is coming on out. The Reaper is going to be actually very important. The Reaper is going to be in place to deal with these Zerglings, but the Zerglings are not going to... Oh my god, okay. That Reaper almost getting surrounded. That was a scary moment, but here we go. Supply depot coming on up. SCV might get picked off over here. Second SCV might get picked off, and even the supply depot may go down. No, he is going to be able to salvage that, save that. And, you know, when you go for those early Zergling push-ins, usually you're hoping for one of two things. Either your opponent tries to go for some sort of low ground command center, you get the snipe off on it, or you're hoping that they try and go for the fast reactor. You just pick off the reactor before they get a chance to really finish it or repair it. Not going to quite get that chance, and 3 Zerglings do manage to survive over here, as the remainder of the Zerglings actually managed to pull that Reaper all the way back across the other side of the map. But we got Queens, should be able to deal with that. Oh, well, one of these Queens still got a journey off creep to properly defend that. But, well, TANGTANG's more interested in just getting that scouting information off. Seasoned, okay, there's no gas, guys. I don't have to worry about some sort of 2-base, Baneling bust follow-up, no kind of crazy Roach bust, nothing insane coming out right now, as this has been, again, a gasless opening. And that's another one of the reasons why Hydra probably got a little bit more aggressive when you're going for the gasless opening. Using those Zerglings on the other side of the map to keep the Reaper at home for a little bit longer is going to be a good way to sort of try and deal with that. If the Reaper does end up going down, sort of surprising, it really shouldn't be going down. I would say you don't want it to go down as TANGTANG, since you are against a gasless expand. Or a gasless opening, I should say. I mean, it's kind of implicit that there's expansion. There's not some sort of 1-base all-in coming out from Hydra. If the 3rd expansion comes down, Hydra's looking to bring this out into a nice good old macro game. And we are going to be seeing... Oh, well, this is sort of different. We do have fast starport coming out on Dust Towers. This is a little bit different, because normally you end up seeing a reactor coming down on the factory relatively early on, and the reason for that is you want to get out those reactor Hellions. You want to shut down the creep spread. Imagine if that, instead of a tech lab over here or something along those lines that was building on the 2nd barracks for a fast combat shield stim, instead, we had a factory already finished with the reactor. The Hellions would be popping out pretty soon, and by the time the Hellions actually got across the map, the creep spread would not have actually made it out past this point. It would have been very easy to do one big scan, clean up a lot of this creep, and really shut down a lot of that creep spread. That is one of the really popular builds that we end up seeing on Dust Towers, but we're seeing a bit of a mix-up as the medevac actually came out, and the medevac is making its way into the main base right now, trying to get some damage done. We got a Widowmine and some Marines, but the Zerglings are already in position and prepared to deal with this. Oh, the Widowmine does get dropped off and kills off a couple of those workers, but actually more primarily killing off some of that larva. I guess not the worst thing in the world to be killing off. But I think at this point, Hydra has enough larva right now. He's not sitting on a desperate number of larvae that he really needs more to produce enough units to spend his money. He is getting up that Spire right now, though. Going for slightly later than the last game, a 3-base Spire play. But really, it's going to be still pretty early on just because he went for that gasless opening. He really hasn't had to make a whole lot of Zerglings. I mean, he made some of those early Zerglings, but really has been quite light on the defenses. And TANGTANG, comparatively, is also not quite as far along in his build as he would like to be. But we do have stim and combat shields coming out, so there is going to still be a nice opportunity for TANGTANG to do something with stim and combat shields finishing up so early on. Going to be getting those medevacs out as well. He might be able to do some nice drop harassment or just a general push-in. Either one, I think, could be pretty effective. But of course, also just adding on some of these Hellions, just not even a reactor Hellion, just one Hellion at a time, the casual, hey, this is going to deal some splash damage to your Zerglings, and you have Zerglings, so let's get them added in. Let's make that factory useful. Kind of cool to see, not really going into the Widowmine production, which is a bit different than most other Terran players. But look at this creep spread going on from Hydra. This is going to make it much harder for TANGTANG to actually push on in to get a whole lot of damage done. I think is going to spend some time either cleaning up the creep or dealing with these units that wait, did Oh, he never got Zergling speed. Hydra never got Zergling speed. That is very interesting. He's making more Zerglings though, so he is relying on them. But hey, creep spread is going to be important, especially important if you don't have Zergling speed out. Oh, some of the Mutals also getting picked off. TANGTANG maybe has a bit more of a chance to get some good damage done over here than I thought. Roach is also going to be popping on out. Those are going to be important. Roach speed is still on the way as well, so they're going to have a harder time closing the distance, closing the gap on these Marines and Marauders. Stim comes out, and they are going to be able to kill off a majority of these these Zerglings. The Roach is now in the mix, but I think that there's a lot of Marauders in the mix as well. I think TANGTANG has enough to push on forward. The Queens are all that are left. Some more Roaches are coming on out, but all of the Mutals have been cleaned up. I think that TANGTANG found a very, very nice window of opportunity where he pushes in with a much faster Stim and combat shield, catching Hydra off guard, drones being pulled off the line, and wow, TANGTANG saying, well, you caught me off guard with a fast Mutalist in the last game. I'm going to catch you off guard in this game. GG. TANGTANG victorious in game number 2, tying up the series 1-1. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're hopping into game number 3. It's ace match. Get your ace matches out in the chat as we spawn down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map. Top of the red Zerg player, the dominating force of North America. Give it up for Root Gaming's very own Hydra. And his opponent, spawning up here in the top left-hand corner of the map, the blue Terran player, the Korean formerly from Prime, according to people in the chat. Thank you very much for that. Give it up for TANGTANG, showing that he has his own tricks up his sleeve. And again, it was just that really cool, very, very fast tech lab on that second barracks, getting out the slightly faster Stim and combat shields that I think really caught Hydra off guard in that game. Normally you end up seeing, especially on that map, the Hellions coming out off of the reactor. You see light bits of pressure, but you didn't see any of that from TANGTANG. He really did mix it up and was able to do that push in maybe 30 to 45 seconds early. And you can imagine 30 to 45 seconds later, a lot more of those Zergons pop out. Galileo Reconstitution's finished up. You have more Mutalists out that are able to deal with some of those medevacs. That is a totally different engagement if it happens 30 to 45 seconds later. So really operating on those slim timings. But Arena, definitely not the most standard map. We already have 6 Zerglings coming out from Hydra once again. And this time he has Zergling speed. Going to be droning up behind this. So this is just going to be the initial 6 Zerglings to maybe put on some pressure. Maybe get a cancel off on this command center that's being built right as it's getting very, very close to finishing up. But also to deal with the Reaper. And of course it looks like the Reaper is going to be the primary concern right now, as it is going to be keeping these Zerglings rather occupied. Arena not really given a lot of opportunities for the Zerglings to run past the Reaper, as this is a pretty easy choke point. Oh my god, whoa, TANGTANG. TANGTANG getting so aggressive with that first Marine. Is just like, yeah, I'm here to get... I think he was there to kill off an Overlord, actually. But I think he realizes, hey, not really going to have the opportunity to. And Hydra going to be pulling some of the... That's actually really cute. Because this Overlord, you can see, it wants to sit over here at this choke point. It wants to get some good vision. This Overlord is the one that normally does get picked off by some of those earlier Marines. But, of course, this Marine also going to be able to pick off one of these Overlords that spots out. Starport coming down. We have the reactor on the factory. So, going to be a bit of a mix-up from that from that second game. But yeah, it's just really cute. If he had been able to secure a little bit more ground space, he could have maybe picked this off. But it's either that or a bit of miscontrol on that, on the rally point on the Marine or the Reaper. Either or. Hellions should be able to deal with these Zerglings, though. They're not going to be able to do too much more damage over here, besides picking off that Reaper, shutting down a bit of that map control for TANGTANG. But of course, there is not a lot of map control to have, considering how short the distances are between the two bases. This is, again, where one of those important things where making sure that you control your own choke point, make it as difficult as possible for your opponent to make it through. And this is also another map that Ravagers and Roaches have become very, very popular on. Not just for putting on that early aggression that, of course, we know Hydra is not afraid to do, but also just in terms of defense. If your opponent is trying to push on through with Marines and Marauders or, you know, siege tanks or something through this choke point, throwing down a couple of corrosive biles in this little choke does make it much, much more difficult to actually poke on in through. It forces them to knock down these rocks, to buy yourself a little bit of time, and even then you can try and set up at a nice concave at this area right around this point where your opponent is. It's not a small choke, but it is still a choke nonetheless. I got the Pult Viking coming out from TANGTANG, going after any overlords he wishes he could have killed off with that earlier little marine pressure. Is going to be able to kill off one of them, as this queen does not quite have enough energy for any sort of transfuses. Zorgon's making their way across the map, and maybe catching some of those Hellions a little bit off guard. Hellions do back up, and we do have additional barracks being thrown down. TANGTANG just gearing up for that traditional bio style of play, but we do have the Spire finishing on up pretty soon. We have the Roach Warren also coming up, and we have a third expansion. So third expansion, I would say, coming down just before the Spire. So the Spire is a little bit on the earlier side comparatively to what it could be. And of course, Spire play obviously going to be very strong just because it's such a short air rush distance across the map. You obviously don't have to worry about choke points, and there's a lot of dead aerospace to manipulate. Of course, there is the small thing that it never actually comes up, this gold expansion. I suppose theoretically the Mutalisk could take out any gold expansion attempts, but oh, we got Derp the Ducky resubscribing for 2 months in a row. Thank you so much, Derp the Ducky, for resubscribing. It is hugely appreciated. But all right, a very, very calm game this time. Much calmer than some of the other games that we've been seeing out of these two players, or just in the series today in general. It's usually gotten a little bit calmer in the later stages of the game, but not this early on. As I think in the units lost, we have 6 Zerglings, 2 Overlords from that Pult Viking. Gonna be finding a third. Unless it turns into the Overseer in time, I don't think it's gonna make it, but oh, here we go. The Mutals coming on in. Gonna be able to pick off a Siege Tank. That's a really nice victory. And look at this. This is so cool to see from Hydra. He is just fearless about those missile turrets. He does end up losing one of those Mutalisks, but he's not afraid to go in through the missile turrets. A lot of Zerg players are a bit afraid to zone through the missile turrets. They'll end up trying to walk around. They end up walking through more Marines. They actually end up taking more losses or just get less damage done. But Hydra just doesn't care. And wow, this creep spread, it's already at the 3rd expansion. Like this creep tumor, if he just gets it there a little bit sooner, if he gets it there maybe 10 to 15 seconds earlier, he denies that expansion from landing until he cleans up down to that creep. But here we go. Mutalisk gonna buy a little bit of time to try and get that creep spread going, to maybe try and get one of the queens to harass the 3rd. Not quite gonna happen. But the Mutals do get some a little bit more damage done, just pulling TANGTANG a bit out of position, allowing him to not only get the creep spread going along that center area, but it's also along that other destructible rock point. He even knocks down, or almost gets that destructible rocks knocked down. Scans going down, and TANGTANG trying to clean up some of the creep, trying to give himself some sort of breathing room. But it's just not going to happen. Ravagers and Roaches are now going to be the unit of choice from Hydra. He's going to be going through that choke point, but I mean, he has opportunity to, because all of those units are busy trying to deal with the Mutals. And now we have one of the Siege Tanks that's immediately picked off. More Corsair Gear is going to be zoning out some of those Marines. I just don't think that TANGTANG has the unit count to deal with this. Even the Mutals going to be able to snipe off some of the Vikings, the Medivacs. All of these units are going to be under fire. There's a massive unit supply lead right now, 50 supply lead for Hydra. It is not even close. The Mutals are going to be alone enough to deal with a natural expansion. Going after some of those Medivacs, it looks like the Mutals count is starting to falter as the missile turret is doing some good damage, but does it matter with this many Roaches and Roaches and Ravagers in your opponent's natural expansion? I think that you're fearless at this point. Now, some of these Roaches are getting cleaned up. The Siege Tank on the high ground is doing some good damage, but the natural expansion is going to go down. 19 workers left for TANGTANG. Hydra is looking good. He's feeling good, and he is going to be moving on to that grand finals, it looks like. TANGTANG has absolutely nothing left to his name at this point. 18 workers all sitting inside the main base. A couple of the mules mining at the 3rd. It's not going to be enough. GG. Hydra. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be our first semifinals. Hydra, I think a bit of a favorite in that series, but still, TANGTANG showing some pretty good games. Hydra going to move on against to the grand finals. Going to face off versus the winner of Beastie Cutie versus Tails. We are at the point where Hydra is the most North American person we've got left in the Chairs4Gaming North American Cup. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be hopping to a short little break while we get the next series set up. You guys are watching BaseTradeTV's Chairs4Gaming Cup. We'll see you guys in a bit.